So yesterday we gave a little bit of an introduction to the laws, not yesterday, last week we gave a bit of an introduction to the laws of Mezuza. And now let's get right at it. And at the end of this section, we will again touch upon the significance and importance of the mitzvah. Okay. It is a positive mitzvah to affix a mezuzah on every doorway. So that's already something to learn. Many people think that it's enough to have a mezuzah on the front door, but the mitzvah is actually on every doorway. Now, through the course of the section, we'll discuss what qualifies for a doorway that is required to have a mezuzah. But for starters, it would be every doorway. Even if you have several rooms and each room has several entrances that are made for entry and exits, even though you are accustomed to use only one of these doorways, nevertheless, all of the doorways must have a mezuzah. Also, even if the number of dwellers has diminished and you, the present dweller, now require only one doorway, nevertheless, all the doorways must have a mezuzah. However, if there is a particular doorway which is designated only as a place of entry for periodic deliveries, and there is also an additional doorway which is used for both entry and exit, and the doorway which is used solely for delivery is exempt, meaning if it's not used for people, but rather for merchandise, then that would be exempt from a mezuzah if you have another door that you use for regular use. Okay.
I've got a question here before we even go any further. Somewhere, I don't know if you mentioned it or someone mentioned it, that a mezuzah is the place where you dwell, where you live. Would you put a mezuzah on your business?
Okay.
So if you've got a business.
Let's go through all the laws and hopefully we'll touch upon everything.
Okay.
But in case you can't wait, if it's a Jewish-owned business, then yes, it would be a place of residence. Meaning residence doesn't only need to be where you sleep at night, it could also be where you take care of your affairs.
Okay, I've got you.
Okay. Good.
And then would you only put it on the front door, or as you've just said now, would it be in all the doors in your business?
Correct. The latter.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Gates opening into courtyards and alleyways and cities and provinces are required to have mezuzahs, as it says in your gateways. Now we'll discuss this more later in the section, but the rationale is because they're leading into a place of residence. So we'll learn soon that any doorway which is taking you towards a place of residence would require a mezuzah. Okay. As opposed to if you had, we'll learn about it soon, but if you had a farm, for example, and there were no places of residence in the farm, it was just animals, and you had a gate at the entrance to the farm that you opened up, which had a doorway, then that would not require a mezuzah because it's not a place of human residence. Okay. Where do we put the mezuzah? So the mezuzah should be placed on the right side when you enter. If you put the mezuzah on the left side, then the mitzvah is invalid. You would have to take the mitzvah down, put it back up, and make a new bracha. And over here, it makes no difference if you're a right-handed or left-handed person. It goes by the house, not by the person. Okay. Now, the next question would be, how do you define what's considered the right side? That's what we discussed in section number 4. If there are two houses, and each house has its own doorway which opens to either a public domain or to a courtyard, and in the partition between the houses is also a door. Okay, so now the question is going to be, which way is considered going in? Because we said the mezuzah needs to go on the right-hand side when you're going in. We must now deliberate how to regard the store regarding the proper side to fix the mezuzah. So in such an instance, we are guided by the location of the hinges. That is, the side where the hinges are attached and towards which the door opens, that it's considered as if you're going in that direction, meaning whichever way the door opens, we consider it as if you're following the door. You're pushing the door, not pulling the door open. And then that would determine, you would follow the right side based on that. meaning whichever way the door opens is considered the main part of the house, and we place the mezuzah on the right side of the doorway, which serves as the point of entry. This rule only applies when the two houses are used equally. But if one of the houses is the main place of utility, we are not guided by the position of the hinges, but should always place the mezuzah on the right side of the entrance to the house, which is the main place of utility. This applies even if the door opens into the second house. So this is quite relevant for us. Maybe back then houses kind of had one door, but in our homes where there could be doors between rooms, sometimes it's not clear which way is considered going in and which way is considered going out. So he is saying that if one room is more important than the other, then we consider going in to be going from the room of secondary importance to the room of primary importance, and then you would put it on your right-hand side. If the two rooms are equally important, then you would follow whichever way the door is turning, meaning whichever way the door goes, that's the way you would walk and then put it on your right side. Parenthetically, Chabad tradition is to always put the mezuzah on the right side of whichever way the door is going, besides for the front door. I guess it's complicated. Ask a local Orthodox rabbi. Okay, so we've discussed the right side, getting it right. Okay, where exactly should the mezuzah be positioned? So the mezuzah should be affixed at the beginning of the upper third of the height of the doorpost. So the average door in Johannesburg or South Africa is 2 meters. So if you divide 2 meters by 3, then you're left with 66 centimeters. So what that means is that the mezuzah, I'm talking about the average doorway, not larger entranceways, the mezuzah should be within 66 centimeters from the top of the doorway if you have a 2-meter doorway. Okay? If you fix it higher than this, it is also valid, meaning it has to be at least within the top third, but anywhere in the top third, provided it is distance at least 1 tefach, which is that, a hand's breadth, from the lintel. If you affix the mezuzah below the upper third of the doorpost, you must remove the mezuzah and reaffix it in the proper manner and recite the bracha once again. But we'll discuss that again in a moment. Let's first go to the end. If you place the mezuzah within the uppermost tefach, you should also remove it and reaffix it properly without making another bracha. It is best to affix the mezuzah within the tefach closest to the outside of the doorpost, but if you deviate from this rule, the basic fulfillment of the mitzvah is unaffected. So let's draw this up quickly. Okay. So here we have our doorway. Okay. Now we're going to divide the doorway into 3 parts. So that's part 1, part 2, part 3. 3 equal parts. This is just approximate. Okay, if these 3 parts are equal, then it means that the mezuzah must be placed within the top third. Okay. So your mezuzah will go there. It could go there, or it could go there, or it could go there, or it could go there, but it shouldn't go all the way back to the top. There should be a hand's breadth, the width of a hand, between the top of the mezuzah and the top of the doorway. So that would still be fine. If it was any higher, you would have to take it down and put it back up. Similarly, he says, if you had the mezuzah lower than the top third, so if it's a 2-way doorway, it was 2-meter doorway, it was more than 66 centimeters from the bottom, then it also wouldn't be kosher. You'd have to put it back up. What he doesn't mention over here is what happens if you've got a really high doorway. So if you have not a 2-meter doorway, but you have a 4-meter doorway. Okay. Now, if you're going to put the mezuzah in the top third, okay, each of these sticks will be a bit longer, but if you're going to put the mezuzah in the top third, then you can't reach it. So there are authorities that say when you're dealing with the very high mezuzah, you can put it at shoulder height, and that's also fine. Meaning this study said if you put the mezuzah lower than the top third, it's invalid and you have to reaffix it. He's speaking specifically when you would be able to still reach it. But if it's a very high doorway, then even if it was lower than the top third, it would still be fine, provided that that's shoulder height. Okay. One final point is, okay, so we have the doorway over here. Now the doorway itself, the thickness of the doorway. So we're going to have it on our right-hand side. So that is the thickness of the doorway. Okay, it doesn't work exactly, this diagram. But the point is that the mezuzah should be closest to the outside of the doorway. Oops. So I don't know if you can easily determine what's the inside of that. Oopsie. I don't know if you can easily determine over here what's the inside and what's the outside. But the point is that as you walk into the room, it should be closest to the outside, meaning over there, rather than further into the room. Okay. Except in this drawing, it's showing the doorway is facing you. Really, the doorway would be inwards. Okay. So basically, a regular doorway, which is the space within where the door goes, you'd have the mezuzah as far out as possible. Okay. Moving on to section number 6. Okay. But if you don't have it on the very outside of the doorway, that's still fine. That's what he mentioned at the end of number 5. Okay, now how do we put the mezuzah onto the doorway? So maybe you could use a bit of press stick, a little bit of sticky tape. She says, no, how do you fix the mezuzah? So firstly, how do you actually get it onto the door? So you roll the parchment from the end to the beginning. You can't frame it open. It needs to be rolled up. That is from the word echad, which is the end of the scroll, back to the word shema, which is the beginning of the scroll. And then place the scroll in a tubular case or any other container and affix the mezuzah diagonally to the doorpost with nails. Now he mentions with nails because it needs to be affixed. Likpoa mezuzah. So just using scotch tape wouldn't be the proper way of doing it. It needs to be in a way that it's really stuck, that it's permanent, that it's like kind of like you building it in. The angle of the diagonal should be such that the top of the mezuzah scroll, which begins with the word Shema, is towards the inside of the house, and the last line of the scroll is towards the outside. I'll describe what that means in a moment. If the doorpost is not sufficiently wide, you should affix the mezuzah in a vertical position. This is preferable to affixing it behind the door. If you did not affix the mezuzah but merely hung the mezuzah is invalid. Similarly, you must be careful to fasten the mezuzah at its top and also at its bottom so that it doesn't hang. So you can't just have it hanging on a hook, and you should have a hook or a screw on both sides. I would recommend rather using a screw than a nail, because if you want to check your mezuzah and you've nailed it in, you're going to have a tough time, as opposed to if you've screwed it in, then you could just unscrew it, take it down, and get it checked. So just did this back. Yeah.
What happens if you've got a solid metal frame that you can't put a nail into, or a screw?
So if you can't put a nail, then I guess you could use real permanent strong adhesive, whatever it is. But even so, you may be able to drill a little hole in. So going back to
the self-tapping screw.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about issues where it would be impossible to drill a hole for whatever reason.
Yeah, so then you would use permanent adhesive. So the last point you said is that the mezuzah should be pointing inwards. Again, this diagram isn't so great because you don't really know which way is in and out. But let's say, this is on your right-hand side and you're walking into the room. So the top of the mezuzah should be towards the inside of the room, and the bottom of the mezuzah should be towards the outside of the room. But if your lintel was very narrow, oh, that's funny. Oh, I see. Then you would just put your mezuzah straight up, rather than put it next to the lintel so that you have space to tilt it. Meaning the main thing is that you want it to be on the actual lintel. Okay. Back to the halacha. Okay. Now, before you put up the mezuzah, you make the bracha. Asher kedishanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu likboya mezuzah. You've sanctified us with his mitzvahs and commanded us to affix a mezuzah. If you're putting up several mezuzahs at once, then you make one bracha and you have in mind to put up all the mezuzahs. Now, he doesn't mention it over here, but I imagine that you probably should not speak when you make the bracha until you finish putting up the last mezuzah, which could be quite a while, because if you've got a South African home where you can have an easy 20, 30, 40 doorways, then it will take some time to put it all up. So maybe what you would do is actually first do the measurements, go around with your tape measure and pencil and just mark where you want to put it and see what it's made out of. Is it wood? Is it metal? What you're going to be using to put it up in each of the places. And once you have everything planned out, which mezuzah you want where, then you don't need to do that, but that might make it easier for you to then, once you make the bracha, to go ahead and get them all up. We'll see soon that some doorways require a mezuzah with a bracha. Some doorways require a mezuzah, but we're not sure whether to make a bracha. And we have the principle, when in doubt, go without. In such an instance, we'll say start with the doorway that definitely does require a bracha. Have in mind all the other doorways, and in that way, all the doorways are covered. Okay. If the mezuzah falls off, it happens, and you put it back up, again, if you've used screws, then it's very unlikely to fall off, even if you're carrying through a piece of furniture, then you'll have to make another bracha. If you remove the mezuzah in order to check it, it's questionable whether you're required to make another bracha, but I'll say that generally you would make another bracha for two reasons. Firstly, because when you're taking it down to check it, you don't know if it's kosher, meaning that it might not be kosher, meaning that you can't say for sure you're having in mind to put it back up. And once you're not having in mind to put it back up, just like the tefillin and the talis, you would be required to make a new bracha. That's firstly. But that's still a matter of debate, because maybe you're thinking that I hope it is kosher, so I am planning on putting it back up. And if you were planning on putting it back up, then why should you make another bracha? But secondly, once the night passes, meaning if you have the mezuzah down overnight, then either way you'd be required to make another bracha. And generally today, when you check mezuzahs, you take it into a scribe, and it takes a bit of time till you get it back, usually at least a night. So practically you would make another bracha when you put your mezuzahs back up. Okay. So that was as far as the bracha. Okay, let's do one more. Adjacent doorway. So some gates have a smaller doorway near the large opening of the gate. So this could also be relevant for us, where we have larger gate for the car, and then sometimes a small pedestrian gate on the side of that. And through the small opening, people usually go out and come in, whereas the main gate is used only occasionally. Since these are two separate doorways, having between them a post which has the width of a tefach, a handbreadth, two mezuzahs are required. So you would put a mezuzah on the larger gateway and on the smaller entranceway.